What's up, college football fans, quarterback fans? Welcome to another QB Spotlight video podcast episode. However you are consuming this, thank you for tuning in. We are a place we talk all things quarterback. We are just a quarterback hub here. So today we're talking about the Big Ten West. Last week we touched on the Big Ten East. Today we're going to do a quarterback preview on every team in the Big Ten West. And what made last week's episode interesting, or what made the Big Ten East interesting, is 5 out of the 7 teams have new quarterbacks or currently have quarterback competitions going on. Well, the Big Ten West isn't any different. They actually have 7 new starting quarterbacks most likely, and we're going to get into it. So it makes the division and the conference very, very interesting with a lot of turnover. But even with that turnover, it's interesting, like the transfer portal these days. Even though there's 7 new starting quarterbacks for these teams, a lot of these quarterbacks have transferred and have a lot of experience at other places, right? Before we dive into the Big Ten West and break down each team and each quarterback, I just want to encourage all to consider subscribing to the channel or the podcast. If you like any quarterback content, college football content, we do quarterback content on a weekly basis. Again, we have quarterback coaches coming in, current quarterbacks, former quarterbacks, quarterback trainers. We are just a quarterback hub here. So if you like the quarterback position, college football, please consider just subscribing and checking us out. So let's go ahead and get into it. And today I want to first start talking about the Purdue quarterback, Hudson Card, right? The transfer from Texas, very athletic guy, maybe more athletic than people probably realize, but I think he's one of the more underrated gets out of any quarterback in this transfer portal class, right? Purdue loses Aiden O'Connell, right? A draft pick going on to the NFL, had a great year last year, throwing the ball around for Purdue. But now with Card coming in, there's a bit more, a different dynamic, right? With Card under center compared to O'Connell, right? Card did some good things at Texas. He never had the full season that he started, but he did some good things at Texas. Started several games. He won the competition in 2021 before I think an injury happened and Thompson took over, or maybe Thompson just took over. But still, he had a very, I would say, successful tenure at Texas, even though he didn't start a ton of games. He's a big recruit from Lake Travis, and what people probably don't realize at Purdue, or maybe you do, is he actually played receiver in high school until I think his junior year, and Lake Travis is a very good high school in Texas, and so to be able to start as a receiver as a sophomore is pretty impressive there. But then he came and of course took over at the quarterback position, and he started a game against Tech last year in 2022, played very good, even though they lost. But his most impressive game to me was when Quinn Ewers got hurt against Alabama. Hudson Card comes in, and on a bum ankle, he hurt his ankle, was able to keep Texas in the game and damn near almost win that game at the very end. So impressive quarterback to me, underrated guy, has 11 touchdown passes in his career, just a 1 reception. And I think Purdue is going to find that he's able to make plays with his legs. But again, Hudson Card, one of my favorite quarterbacks, I think, in the whole transfer portal, and I think this is a great get for Purdue. All right, let's move on to Illinois. Another quarterback I like, and another team that's losing a starting quarterback in Tommy DeVito. Didn't get drafted, but still signed an undrafted free agent contract, so still an impressive feat and has his chance to the NFL. So still Illinois is losing a NFL quarterback, but they brought in transfer quarterback Luke Altmyer, and I know there's a competition kind of going on, I believe, at Illinois, but Luke Altmyer, I'm pretty sure is the guy, and I'm excited for him, right? I thought going into the season last year when he was competing against Jackson Dart for Ole Miss, I thought he was going to be the guy. I think he's a talented guy. Didn't play a lot last year, but got some quality playing time in the 2021 bowl game when Matt Corral got injured. I forget who they played. Was it Baylor maybe? But regardless, he saw some live bullets. Was a low 4-star coming out of high school. If you look at 247, they're going to compare him to Shane Buechele, right? He can move a little bit. He's not going to necessarily burn a cornerback, but he can make plays in the pocket, outside the pocket, and I think he's going to be a good quarterback for Illinois. So again, I know I said Hudson Card was the most underrated quarterback in the transfer portal, and if that's true, then Luke Altmyer is probably number 2, because I think he has a chance to put up really big numbers for Illinois. And if they have the defensive play that they had last year, which I know they lost a lot of guys to the NFL draft, they could still be a pretty damn good team in this conference. I think Luke Altmyer is going to pick up where Tommy DeVito left off. Give me 1 second. I know I'm spitting a lot here. Let me get a sip of water in, and we'll keep going. All right, that's a little better. So let's move on to Iowa. Probably the worst passing game in all of FBS. Is that fair to say? They had 7 passing touchdowns to 7 interceptions, like 2,000 yards passing. So I think it's probably worse than Rutgers. or right there with Rutgers. I think Rutgers had like 1,800 yards passing and some crazy bad number as well for TDs and interceptions. But I think Cade McNamara is a big upgrade from Spencer Petras. And I don't think all the blame is fair to give to Spencer Petras, because the year before last year, he actually had a decent season for Iowa. So while I think it's fair to give Petras some blame, of course, for me, it's hard to tell where all the blame should go, right? Sure, some on Petras, but play calling, coaching. Like, what was going on? No adjustments were being made, right? So Cade McNamara coming in has good experience from Michigan. When he started in 2021, had 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, over 2,500 yards passing. Did a really good job just managing that team and leading that team to have a really, really good year and taking to the playoffs. And so I think that experience is huge. And I think he's also a talented cat that my only concern is if Iowa doesn't progress their offense. But from all the reports we're hearing, it seems like that they will be doing that. So I like McNamara. Again, it seems like this is the conference of underrated quarterbacks. I think McNamara is an underrated quarterback. I think he can come in, have a good amount of success at Iowa, and hopefully they put him in a good position to succeed. I think that's the biggest thing, the Iowa offense putting McNamara in a position to succeed. But at the very least, he can throw the ball around, good quarterback. I think you know what you're getting, and I think you have a higher floor, if you will, than maybe the past few years. But again, McNamara, pretty excited for that. Another underrated quarterback. Let's move on to Wisconsin. Here's a cat here who has put up huge numbers at SMU, and Tanner Mordecai, right? For those who don't know, Tanner Mordecai, the SMU transfer, started at OU, went to SMU the past few years, put up huge numbers in the AAC, and now has transferred to Wisconsin. And the offense that Wisconsin has, bringing in Phil Longo, the former UNC offensive coordinator, on paper and theoretically fit Tanner Mordecai, fit his skill set. He should go in there and have some success. And I do think he's going to have some success. I think there's a path where he's one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten. However, the spring game, or I guess a spring practice, did not go as well as Mordecai would have hoped or Wisconsin fans would have hoped, right? He struggled, had several interceptions, just didn't look like the quarterback you want your starting quarterback to look like in the spring game. But that's okay. Spring games are overrated anyways. Some guys have great games and end up being horrible. Some guys have bad games and end up being really, really good. But I think there is some fair concern with Mordecai. Whenever he played better teams in the AAC, or whenever they would go out and play teams outside the AAC, is when he struggled, right? So here, that's his main argument against them. Against good defenses, he struggled. Against bad defenses, he had a field day, which is great, right? But against Cincy, in both years that he played him, he had a combined 170 yards passing. So didn't even top 200 yards passing with combining both those games. Against TCU, who's again one of the better, tougher teams on their schedule, despite SMU putting up some big numbers, he had 5 picks in 2 games against TCU. So I think it's fair to wonder and to question, what is Mordecai going to look like when he is playing some of these Big Ten defenses that have a lot of athletes? And I think that's a fair question. I think that remains to be seen. But the other argument from the other side would be that, yes, he could struggle, but he has a lot better weapons around him now to kind of be in the same level as these top Big Ten defenses he's going to be facing. And I think that's a good argument too, but still at SMU, he had some good receivers, some NFL quality receivers. So I think it's a fair argument to make on both sides. At the end of the day, at least they have a guy that has experience, at least they have a guy that has played in some big games, and they have a guy that has put up some big numbers, right? So I think even if he does struggle against good defenses, they could still get that 8-9 win mark, right? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I do think Tanner Mordecai has that potential, but I think it's fair concern because of the games in the past where maybe he struggled against better defenses. All right, here's a program who's been getting a lot of talk lately, and that's Nebraska. They lose Casey Thompson, who started last year but, got injured. So, the quarterback position was, I guess, unstable. I guess is a fair way to put it. Coaching change, Matt Rule coming in, right? They want to bring in their guy. So they have Jeff Sims transfer in, and they also had, Chubba Purdy from Florida State? However, it's looking like Sims is going to be the guy. So with Casey Thompson, Thompson, by the way, is a quarterback I like, but he's been injured, so I don't know if he competed much this spring. But regardless, he transferred, and now he's at FAU. And so Jeff Sims is, it looks like to be the guy moving forward. And Sims is a guy who I always liked at Georgia Tech, right? Started as a freshman and just got thrown in the fire. He's been the starter the past few years, had some injuries, has had some up and down play for sure. But I think if he's in the system and if he's in a coaching staff that they can really develop him, he's got a lot of tools to like. He really flashed at Georgia Tech. Maybe didn't put it all together, but he really did flash at Georgia Tech and showed the ability that he has to potentially be a really good quarterback. So hopefully that's the case with Nebraska. Hopefully they're able to surround him with some good coaching. And look, he's got some experience, right? 40 career touchdowns. I think that's combined passing and running, but he's got experience. He's playing some big games, and so I think he's definitely a dual threat cat. And again, if he's able to be developed, and he can really take the next step. That was the main part missing at Georgia Tech, was if he's able to develop. And their new OC, Satterfield from South Carolina. Depending who you ask, you'll get different answers, right? So I think there were definitely some questions whenever he got hired, but hell, he knows 10 times more than I can ever dream about knowing. So the chances of Sims being developed are at least higher than maybe they would have been if he stayed at Georgia Tech. So it remains to be seen, but I still think if you're a Nebraska fan, you have a reason to be excited for Jeff Sims. Again, potential, always liked him, and I think if he's around that right system, the right coaching staff, the right players, maybe the right culture, I don't know, he could really take off. So 2 more teams we're going to talk about, and these are probably the 2 teams I know least amount, or at least have the least amount of kind of quarterback knowledge over their guys, so I apologize. Maybe you can turn this off if you don't care what I have to say, but Minnesota is number 1. They lose Tanner Morgan, who was there for Tanner Morgan, excuse me, who did I say Morgan? Excuse me. I got the Mordecai in my brain. They lose Tanner Morgan, who was there forever, right? Did some nice things. The biggest thing was he offered some stability. Had that really good 2019 season, and then was kind of up and down. But at least you knew you were getting a tough cat, and you were getting a guy who had experience under center. And he was injured a lot last year, and so the guy who is taking over now, who we'll get to in a second, has some experience. So Morgan gone, and then their new quarterback, who I'm going to butcher the name, so please forgive me, Minnesota fans, Athan Kaliakmanis. So butcher me in the comments if you are even watching this. I apologize, but I don't know a ton about him. He did play a fair amount last year, and actually did show some good things, right? What was the game against Wisconsin? I think he had a really good game against Wisconsin, and if you talk to Minnesota fans, they seem pretty excited and pretty high on him. There's some Minnesota fans I interact with, and they're definitely on the excited side for Athan, we'll call him. And so they're excited. There's potential there. And I think their biggest thing is they saw what he could do against the Wisconsin. And so if he can build on top of that, then Minnesota, could be in a good position at quarterback. Right now, he still had some up and down play, but he did get a lot of playing time, which is good. So he has the experience going into the season. Sometimes all you need is that full off season as being the guy, or potentially being the guy, to really have a season where you take off. So again, Athan, I'm gonna try it one more time. Kaliakmanis, I apologize, but again, has some hype within the Minnesota fan base. Probably people outside Minnesota may not know that much about him, but there is potential there. Last team we'll talk about, Northwestern. Again, one of the teams that got the worst, some pretty not great quarterback play, right? So towards the bottom of the FBS, they had 10 passing touchdowns to 17 interceptions last year. They had several guys that played last year. Ryan Helinski was their main guy, but they have brought in former Cincinnati and former Eastern Michigan quarterback Ben Bryant, right? He started at Cincy, went to Eastern Michigan, started last year at Cincy, did some good things, but then, Cincy brought in a few of the guys. They have Evan Prater and Emory Jones, and so now Ben Bryant has transferred to Northwestern. In my opinion, he has to be the guy, or at least start off as the guy. They definitely need improvement at that position. They need to take steps for Northwestern to have a shot to win some more games than what they did last year, right? So again, Bryant has done some nice things. He's got plenty of experience. So I think he's probably the cat moving forward. But regardless, they need improved quarterback play than what they got last year. So again, the Big Ten, we talked about the East last week. We talked about the Big Ten West today. A lot of new quarterbacks coming in. The East having 5 out of 7 new quarterbacks, and then the West, every team is probably going to have a new starting quarterback than what they had last year. But they all have experience because all these guys have transferred, right? So I think it's interesting that new guys, however, there's experience, but they're still getting broken into that new offense, that new scheme, the new just culture overall. But the Big Ten, I think in general, is going to be super, super interesting conference to watch. And before we end this, and before I give you all a chance to comment, we'll do our G5 quarterback that we're going to talk about. Again, every show we're going to talk about at least one G5 quarterback. We're going to show them some love. That's UTSA quarterback Frank Harris, who's one of the best quarterbacks in all of the Group of 5. If you haven't watched him, please, I encourage you to check him out and check out a UTSA game. They're a fun team to watch. They put up a lot of points, and they got some guys that will play at the next level. Frank Harris potentially being one of those guys. But he's been a starter for several years. He's been a huge part of UTSA's rise in college football, if you will. Definitely a good athlete who can run, but he'll also push the ball downfield and can throw. Just go look at those numbers. Again, Frank Harris, UTSA quarterback. Make sure you check him out. And we have a video talking about the top G5 quarterbacks going into the 2023 season. So if you're interested, go watch that as well. But people, seriously, thank you for watching. Sincerely, it means a lot to us. If you watch from YouTube or podcast, we are thankful, and thanks for tuning in and talking quarterback. So before we go, let us know your thoughts below. What are your thoughts on the Big Ten overall? What are your thoughts on the Big Ten West? A lot of new quarterbacks being broken in. Let us know in the comments below your thoughts, what you think is going to happen, and keep tuning in. We'll see you next time this week